Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are diving straight into one of the most fascinating mind-body mysteries out there. For centuries, humans have sensed that our bellies and our brains are connected. But recently, a massive convergence of neurobiology, microbiology, and brain imaging has revealed something totally wild. We don't just have one brain, we actually have two. And the constant, nonstop chatter between them shapes our mood, our overall health, and even our highest cognitive thoughts. So, think about it. Have you ever just trusted your gut on a big decision or felt those crazy nervous butterflies in your stomach before you had to speak in public? We all have, right? This universal human experience is deeply hardwired into our everyday language. But for a really long time, the actual biological reality of this phenomenon was completely hidden from us. Because we couldn't just look inside the body, humanity spent centuries trying to visualize this unseen energy. Artists, healers, and mystics represented these forces through religious iconography, drawing glowing auras, rings of flames, or solar discs around people. Like the philosopher Walter Benjamin famously noted, auras appear in all things. This was really just our ancestors' early attempt to map out an energy field that we could quite literally feel pulsing within us, long before science actually had the tools to prove it. Section 1, Meet Your Second Brain. What was once described as this invisible, mystical aura is actually a hard biological reality living right inside our bellies. So let's pivot from the history to the hardcore neuroscience. A major breakthrough happened back in the 19th century with the discovery of the enteric nervous system, or the ENS. Because of its sheer complexity, it's built from the exact same embryonic cells as your actual brain, and its direct bidirectional connections with our emotional centers, it is widely considered our second brain. You can really just think of it as a massive peripheral extension of your limbic system, reaching all the way down into your gut. And to give you a sense of scale here, just look at this number, 600 million. Your gut houses up to 600 million neurons. That is roughly equal to the number of neurons in your entire spinal cord. It is an absolute powerhouse of a processing center, perfectly positioned to monitor our largest body surface and manage our super complex internal environment. But get this, what is truly staggering is that 95% of your body's serotonin is located right there in your gut, mostly locked inside specialized cells. Now, we usually talk about serotonin as the happy chemical, up in our brain, right? But down in the gut, it's doing the heavy lifting to trigger peristalsis, the muscle movements of digestion. On top of that, it acts as a critical messenger, constantly firing emotional and sensory updates back up to headquarters. Which brings us to Section 2, the two-way communication highway. Okay, let's dive into how this bidirectional signaling actually works, because it's fascinating. This isn't just a dictatorship where the brain barks orders at the stomach. It's a highly complex, two-way highway. On one side, we have top-down signaling. Your brain can completely override local gut reflexes through your autonomic nervous system and the HPA axis. For example, if you experience intense fear or deep sadness, your brain sends signals down that can literally stop your digestion dead in its tracks or cause painful spasms. But on the flip side, we have bottom-up signaling, where the gut is constantly firing routine sensory and physiological updates back upward.
So how exactly does the gut talk to the brain? Well, it uses three main encoders. First up, primary afferent neurons, especially the vagus nerve, which act like physical telephone wires. Second, immune cells in the gut that release signaling molecules. And third, enteroendocrine cells. Surprisingly, your gut is literally the body's largest endocrine organ. It's like a massive hormone factory, pumping out over 20 different peptides. Stuff like cholecystokinin to tell you you're full, and ghrelin to ring the dinner bell because you're hungry. These signals broadcast straight up to the brain.
But here is the crazy part. Despite this absolute fire hose of data rushing from your belly to your head, you only consciously perceive maybe 5% of it. We only notice it when it demands immediate action, like when you get a sharp hunger pang or desperately need to run to the restroom. The other 95% of that signaling, it is processed entirely under the radar, subconsciously pulling the strings on your arousal, your motivation, and your mood. Section 3, Anatomy of a Gut Feeling. So if we aren't consciously aware of most of this digestion happening, how do these hidden biological signals actually translate into what we experience as intuition? Let's break down the anatomy of a gut feeling. The absolute crucial missing link here is a concept called interoception. Basically, this is your brain's perception of your body's internal physiological state. It is the literal neurobiological bridge between raw physical digestion and the abstract concept of intuition. Here is how it maps out inside your head. Visceral input from the gut travels up the spinal and vagal pathways and lands in a specific brain region called the anterior insula. The anterior insula acts as the ultimate integration hub. It takes those raw, subconscious gut signals, tosses them into a blender with our complex cognitive functions and emotions, and mixes it all together to produce a conscious feeling. And this integration starts literally the moment we're born. Gut-to-brain signaling gives newborns their very first value-based map of the world. A baby figures out what is good or bad based purely on the warm pleasure of a full stomach or the sharp pain of hunger. Those very first experiences lay down deep interoceptive memories. As we grow up, our brains rely on those deeply ingrained gut-based memories to quickly predict outcomes, which completely biases our intuitive decisions later in life. That is quite literally your gut feeling guiding you. Moving to section 4, microbes, mood, and disease. Now, human cells aren't the only ones involved in this conversation. We have to talk about the gut's microscopic ecosystem, which plays a massive part in keeping this delicate mind-body balance in check. Look at this massive number on screen, 100 trillion. There are actually more microorganisms living in your gut than there are human cells in your entire body. They carry 100 times more genes than the human genome itself. And recent evidence proves that these microbes actively influence our brain development, memory formation, and even our emotional arousal. We are essentially a walking, talking ecosystem. But when this bidirectional axis falls out of balance, it can be incredibly debilitating. Dysregulation of the system is a huge factor in functional gastrointestinal disorders, like irritable bowel syndrome. In these cases, patients unfortunately develop a heightened sensitivity to totally normal gut signals. The brain predicts pain based on negative past memories, creating a severe mismatch between what the gut is actually feeling and what the brain expects to feel. We also see this dysregulation in eating disorders, where a mismatch in the expected hedonic reward of food can actually drive compulsive overeating. Section 5. Souls, meridians, and auras. This brings us right back full circle. As we wrap up this explainer, let's synthesize this hard neurobiology with those cultural and energetic models we talked about at the very beginning. It's honestly brilliant how different frameworks have been attempting to map the exact same human energy all along. Where modern neuroscience studies the enteric nervous system, energetic traditions point to the third chakra, the solar plexus, located right in the belly, acting as the center for our social life and nourishing our core. And where science maps out interoception, traditional Chinese medicine mapped meridians, linking specific organs to emotional conflicts. For example, they viewed the stomach as reacting to unexpected events that are hard to digest, while the spleen reacts to expected events that are difficult to assimilate. Even the ancient energetic concepts of the intellectual soul perfectly acknowledge that our brain's left frontal lobe, our amygdala, and our limbic system are inextricably tied to processing these internal bodily states. Whether you want to call it the flow of subtle energy or the vagus nerve transmitting peptides, the core truth remains beautifully the same. The mind and the gut are completely inseparable. Which leaves us with a genuinely wild idea to ponder. If our brain's emotional and decision-making centers evolved from and still completely rely upon this massive network of nerves in our gut, are our highest, most complex cognitive thoughts actually just echoes of our deepest, most primal digestive instincts? Definitely something to chew on. Next time you trust your gut, remember, you're literally listening to your second brain. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I'll catch you in the next one.